Boyos. Salve. Salve boyos. What's this? Okay. Yeah, and not salvete, like I said in the preamble to the Aryan pigeonhood. Not salvete. Why did I bring that up? I brought that up because several years ago, it has over 3 years ago, I came across a comment which was very critical of me and of the Telegram group as a whole. And in this comment, the person wrote that in the Telegram group, we are pretending to know how to speak Latin, but we're making basic mistakes all the time. And I read it and I got offended. I got a little offended, I gotta say. There are many things you could say about me, but one of them is not that. Come on. If you're going to be critical of me, if you're going to talk shit about me, or the Telegram group, which no longer exists, there's a different one. I'm not a member of that, but there is a Telegram group, however. That's a continuation of the old group. But if you're going to be critical of me or the Telegram group or anything of that sort, at least there are so many things you could say that are true. There are so many criticisms you could hurl my way that are true, that actually happen. But don't make shit up. Nobody was speaking Latin in the Telegram group. Nobody was pretending to know how to speak Latin. Nobody. The only Latin word I used and we used in the Telegram group was salve. Salve. And if that's the word you're talking about, and that we should be saying salvete instead of salve, because in Latin, correct Latin grammar, you use salvete for plural nouns when addressing more than one person, and salve when addressing one person. Well, goddamn. Really, do you have to be that pedantic? I took salve from HBO's Rome. Never heard anyone say salvete there. Maybe nobody was addressing more than one person when using the word salve in the script, in the screenplays. Maybe. Either way, I took it from HBO's Rome. It sounded good, and I started using it myself. Salve. So if that's what you were talking about, whoever you are, that we're pretending to know how to speak Latin in the Telegram group because we're using the word salve. Now, you didn't say because we're using the word salve. I'm adding that on to your comment, to your criticism. But once again, salve is a loan word, and there's no need for loan words to follow grammatical rules of the language they're taken from. And, okay? So, salve boyos is very correct for a loan word. However, if you want to be pedantic, if you truly want to be pedantic, then it shouldn't be salvete. Okay, it should be salvete, but it shouldn't be pronounced salvete. Just like it shouldn't be pronounced salve, because ancient Latin pronunciation was the V was a W sound, a W sound. So it would be salve, salve. And salve would be salve, and salvete would be salvete. And veni, vidi, vici would be weni, weedy, weeki. Because the C was pronounced like a K. So it would be weni, weedy, weeki. I came, I saw, I conquered. Weni, weedy, weeki. Not veni, vidi, vici. And Cicero would be Cicero. And Caesar, Julius Caesar, would be Julius Caesar. Julius Caesar. Okay, that's where the word Kaiser comes from. Kaiser. And actually, the Latin, ancient Latin pronunciation would be Kaiser. Yeah, that's right. So that would be correct if you want to be pedantic. So, but I'm only pedantic when it comes to the English language. That's it. Okay, because it's my native tongue, and I'm not even that pedantic when it comes to English anyway. I'm just pedantic. It's not pedantism if it's just about the basics. Like there, and your, and it's. How do you spell it is? It's the contraction, as opposed to the possessive it's with no apostrophe. Really basic things. This is like grade school we're talking about. So I wouldn't call that pedantism at all. Anyway, this is an off the cuff ramble. I just thought I'd record something off the cuff. Well, this does have a purpose. It's not just a completely off the cuff ramble, but it is off the cuff because I like off the cuff material myself. I like to play it in the background and let somebody ramble while I do things or just lounge. And I've noticed that my off the cuff ramble about the Rothschild the Rothschild billionaire marrying a middle aged DUC, that was the main topic of that 2 hour ramble, but there were many other topics. It was all intertwined, ultimately, but that was the main topic. It's getting quite a few views, so, and it has been getting quite a few views, so I can see that I'm not the only one that enjoys a good off the cuff ramble from time to time, a nice off the cuff video that I don't have to pay 110% attention to and follow every word. Just a nice, soothing, off the cuff ramble. But the main purpose of this ramble is to introduce to you my tribe scenario, which I came up with 15 years ago, at the age of 28. I came up with it and I presented it to my clients at the time just to test, because this was all very new territory for me 15 years ago, very new. 15 years ago, that version of me, wow, completely ignorant and subhuman compared to who I am today. But nevertheless, I was already on my way to androcentrism, androcentric sovereignty. I was on my way. Yeah, I could say that. That version of me was on my way to this version of me, absolutely. 28. Shortly after I hopped on roids, I believe I came up with it the first summer after hopping on roids. So, about 6 months after I hopped on roids in that case. And this is the scenario, and I came up with it to test the gynocentric programming of society. I wanted to see how, because the scenario, to me, the answer is very obvious. It's crystal clear, but I thought it wouldn't be crystal clear to everyone I presented it to, and I was right at that time. I was right. Nobody got the answer, actually. Nobody did. I presented it to a few females and a few males, and everybody gave me the wrong answer. They gave me the gynocentric answer, the soy-addled answer, the brainwashed answer, the woke. At that time, 15 years ago, the word woke, of course, did not exist, but I'll use it now. They gave me the woke answer, yes. So the gynocentric, soy-addled, woke answer, the Netflixian answer. So here's the scenario. Okay, you have two tribes living on two different big tropical islands. And this is a very hypothetical, of course, scenario, unrealistic hypothetical scenario, because you would never have such male to female ratios in tribes, in real tribes. So, of course, I understand that. I acknowledge that. So, you have two tribes living on two very big tropical islands. One tribe has 95 males and 5 females. The other tribe has 95 females and 5 males. So once again, one tribe has 95 males and 5 females, and the other tribe has 95 females and 5 males. Which tribe is in a better position for long-term survival? That's the first part of the scenario. Which tribe is in a better position for long-term survival? And here the answer should be the tribe with 95 females and 5 males due to procreation, right? The 5 males will be enough to provide for the tribe, to protect the tribe from any potential predators on the island. It's an uninhabited island, by the way. That's important, yes? It's an uninhabited island. It's just inhabited by wildlife. So the 5 males will be enough to protect the tribe, to hunt, to provide for the tribe, the brawn, the muscle power, the intelligence as well, the innovation, and of course the sperm. The sperm, 5 males is enough. The other tribe with 95 males and 5 females, well, they're going to have a really rough time, and in the long term, they just will not survive, reproductively speaking. And there will be a lot of infighting, because there would be only 5 females and 95 males as well. So it's not just about reproduction, but the massive, massive infighting for access to the sperm walls, not the sugar walls. I call them the sperm walls now, okay? Because that's what they are, actually. Walls covered in sperm residue. Yeah, so definitely, if we're talking about 2 separate islands, uninhabited separate tropical islands, then the tribe with the 95 females and 5 males is in a much better position for long-term survival. Now, the second part of the scenario is the tribes are now living on the same very big island. Okay. On different ends of the island. Now, which tribe is in a better position for long-term survival? Nobody gave me the correct answer, which is where they started talking about trade, economy, reproduction, again, all these things, but they didn't come up with the most obvious answer or the clearest predicament, which is, of course, that if they're living on the same very big island, then eventually they're going to meet, yes. And even those that came up with the thought, yeah, they will eventually meet, they started talking about trade, different things. They didn't talk about the most obvious thing, which is that the tribe with 95 males will completely dominate and exercise complete agency / power, agency's power, over the tribe with 5 males. Okay? The tribe with 95 males is now in an extremely advantageous position, as it has maximum agency over the tribe with 5 males and 95 females. The 95 females are basically useless in physical combat. The 95 males they can do whatever they want with the 5 males. They can kill them, they can enslave them if the males are cowards and they will not fight to the death if given the chance, or kill themselves, but they will surrender and become slaves. So they can kill them, they can enslave them, they can torture them if they're cowards and they don't fight to the death and they're captured. Or they can allow them graciously to integrate into their tribe, but force them, of course, to adopt the tribe's customs and the tribe's language if they don't speak the same language. So force them to assimilate. And maybe they would even allow them to have some of the women, if they're that gracious. They would have to be very gracious and very magnanimous, those 95 males, to share the wealth, to share the sperm walls. But the point is, it's entirely up to them. They have the agency in this scenario. Okay. So, two different parts to the scenario. The first part, and two very different parts, and two very different answers. And if someone is gynocentrically brainwashed by Netflix, by Hollywood, by everything mainstream, where females are kicking ass and they have 100% agency, and if they're not as strong as the males, then they're even stronger than the males. They're in charge. Boss, what is it? Boss girls? Or boss babes? Or whatever the hell it's called. That's not reality. That's not reality. That is the modern gynocentric, hyper-gynocentric cuck collective. The agency females have in the cuck collective is 100% granted to them by the cuck collective. Therefore, it is 100% artificial. Okay? It's 100% artificial. And some cum-eating cuckolds can say, some hyper-gynocentric cum-eating cuckolds can say, oh, but what if the 5 males are all pretty boys, and the females really like them? Females are supposed to have sexual agency according to these cuckolds, right? So, where is their sexual agency in this scenario? Where is their sexual agency in this scenario? If the 95 males can kill the 5 pretty boys, absolutely slaughter them, or turn them into catamites. And if you don't know what a catamite is, look that up. Where is the sexual agency? If we're an intersexual selection species, where's the sexual agency of these 95 females? Why don't they practice their sexual agency? Because they don't have any. They can't do anything against 95 males. Absolutely anything. 95 females can't even do anything against 10 males, let alone 95 males. They probably can't even do anything against 5 males. They could if they had the intelligence and character to band together and dominate the 5 males, but they don't. They are inherently cowards. They're not biologically designed to resist and fight to the death and risk the destruction of their wombs because they are incubators. That's their main purpose. That's their main evolutionary biological purpose, incubators. So they are designed to submit, do everything to protect the womb. They're not supposed to fight to the death. They're not supposed to resist. They're not supposed to put their wombs in danger, risk the safety of their wombs. Okay? So it's not just about physical characteristics, but mental. Mentally, women are much more cowardly than females are much more cowardly than males. They're submissive. Okay? They have to be. So that's why they're horrible soldiers. Even in today's day and age where you have modern tech and you have guns, and they're horrible, horrible soldiers. It's about holding the line. It's about discipline. It's about courage. Okay? And morale, and not just physical strength. And females really don't have that. They're not supposed to have that. Inherently, innately, genetically. They make horrible soldiers. Horrible. And they're also a horrible influence on the males, of course. In the ranks. If they are present in the ranks. If even one female is present in the ranks. That's right. That's right. Where is their agency? Let's say those are 5 pretty boys. The prettiest of pretty boys. Or they're 5 Pookies and Ray Rays. If you don't know what that is, look that up too. Pookie and Ray Ray. Right? females, or the hyper-violent, hyper-low inhibition, and generally very often hyper-serotonin depleted due to being raised by single mothers, due to being raised in a ghetto, due to abuse from primitive, abusive fathers, due to ethnodeterminism. Hyper-serotonin depleted pookies and ray-rays, thugs. Self-destructive, violent, low inhibition, generally low intelligence, well, but not always. Thugs. Serotonin depleted thugs. Pookies and ray-rays. But the word thug, it applies to all ethnicities and races, not just to blacks. It can be white pookies, any kind of pookie. Pookies and ray-rays. So yeah, teenage females especially, but all females, but especially teenage females. The hormonal, hyper-fertile females, the most prized females, they're all obsessed with either pookies and ray-rays. They view self-destructive, low inhibition, violence, and serotonin-depleted behavior as a sign of power, when it's the exact opposite. But they are hormonal and retarded, these teenage females, and they're not supposed to have any agency. Or they will select for pretty boys. Regardless of intelligence, regardless of athletic ability, regardless of character, regardless of emotional stability, regardless of chances of that particular male remaining to be a father to the child, and therefore providing the child with a maximum serotonin levels, as opposed to complete serotonin depletion due to being raised by a single mother and abused by a never-ending revolving door of males that are slamming the single mother and abusing the children. If it's a female, she's getting abused. If it's a male, he's getting abused. He feels completely fucking helpless from a very young age, helpless, powerless, cucked from a very young age, having to see all these males coming and going, fucking his mother. That is complete serotonin depletion. You know, females don't take that into consideration at all. They just spread their legs for the pookies and ray-rays, spread their legs for the fucking pretty boys, and then the pretty boys disappear, and the pookies and ray-rays disappear, and the females are left as single mothers, and they're raising completely serotonin depleted, completely fucked in the head, neurochemically traumatized females and males, daughters and sons. They're slated for self-destruction. They're slated for a lifetime of abuse. They're slated for a lifetime of very low self-esteem and self-destructive behavior. And they're slated for an impoverished existence, not just impoverished economically, socioeconomically, but impoverished neurochemically. Serotonin poverty. Serotonin impoverishment. But anyway, where is their agency? Those 95 females, they love their 5 pretty boys and pookies and ray-rays. They love them. Let's say it's the ultimate combination. It's a pretty boy and it's a pookie. It's a pretty boy, pookie, and ray-ray. And all 5 of them are pretty boy, pookies, and ray-rays. The females want them to live. The females want their pretty boy, pookies, and ray-rays to live. Where's their agency? I thought they're supposed to have agency. Where's their agency? Why can the 95 males just come and do whatever the fuck they want with the females and with those 5 pookies and ray-rays, pretty boy pookies and ray-rays? Where's the agency of 95 females? There is no agency. They don't have any. I spent 12 hours yesterday reading about primate testicles and primate mating, reading and writing. I'm writing a lot of notes about primate testicles and primate mating habits. It's all very fascinating. Because I'm looking for the evolutionary biological evidence, because the evidence, I mean, it's so, you can just argue, like I'm arguing now. They're not supposed to have any agency. Females. Obviously, we are an intrasexual selection species. It's clear as day. But it's good to have some really hard evidence, some really hard evolutionary biological evidence What does the evolutionary biological record show? And not during agrarian times of the last 10,000 years and pastoral times of the last 10,000 years, because then it clearly shows. The DNA records show that suddenly there's a Y chromosome bottleneck appearing 10,000 years ago. 95% of the male population disappears from the reproductive record. And there's a general consensus that that is a direct consequence of agriculture, wealth accumulation, and a very fast transition from a more egalitarian hunter-gatherer society. And by egalitarian, it doesn't mean that females have rights, okay? That's what people think. They're so brainwashed, just like with the island scenario and tribe scenario. They're so brainwashed that they think egalitarian means that females have rights, females have agency. No, it doesn't. Egalitarian means that that there is just less of a hierarchy, or there is no hierarchy. There's always a hierarchy, so there's a much flatter hierarchy. That's all it means. It doesn't mean that females have to have rights. It just means there's a flatter hierarchy among males. That's all egalitarianism means in hunter-gatherer societies. By default, it means that there's a flatter hierarchy among males, and there's a greater distribution of females among males. That's all it means. Females and goods and everything, right? That's all it means. So the DNA records show that reproduction was much more egalitarian among hunter-gatherer societies and among hunter-gatherers than among pastoral and agrarian societies 10,000 years ago. Now, males, that's just human, which just tells me it's subhuman nature. You know, greed, violence, it's subhuman nature. Greed is subhuman nature. And the only reason, but that's going into a different topic. Yes, the only reason, but I'll get into it. The only reason hunter-gatherer societies were egalitarian was not because of that they were genuinely altruistic and genuinely good towards each other and magnanimous and generous and cooperative. No, the only reason that the greediest males couldn't hog all the females was because they needed cooperation. That's the only reason. And if they didn't share the females, if the females weren't distributed equally, then there would simply be no cooperation. In fact, bonobos and chimps, I've been doing a lot of reading on primatology, a lot of studies, but chimps and bonobos, they all get to fuck, actually. They all get to fuck. One study shows that the highest ranking chimp had 199 copulations, and the lowest ranking chimp had 23 or 29 copulations. And all the chimps in between, and these were 9. There were 9 chimps in this particular study. In this troop, there were 9 chimps. And the highest ranking chimp, was it 9 or 14 chimps? Let's just say it was 9 chimps. It was either 9 or 14 chimps. And the highest ranking chimp had 199 copulations, and the lowest ranking chimp had 23 copulations. And all the chimps in between had between 50. So the second lowest ranking chimp had over 50 copulations. So all the chimps in between the lowest ranking and highest ranking, had between 50 and 100 copulations. Something like that. So 199 versus 23 for the lowest ranking chimp. It's not that bad. It's not that bad at all, actually. I was surprised to learn this. And bonobos are similar. All the bonobo males, or male bonobos, get to fuck. And all the male chimps get to fuck as well. So the second lowest ranking chimp had about 50 copulations. And the highest ranking chimp, number 1, had 199. Let's say 200. So the second lowest ranking chimp had 25% of the copulations of the highest ranking chimp. Yeah, yeah. That's egalitarian, okay? That's cooperation. So now I understand why, it's, oh, this is also fascinating. I have so much information to share because 96% of the copulations, 96% of the copulations took place in front of another male, often a dominant male. And they just let it happen. They let it happen. Only 6% of the copulations were interrupted by a dominant male or by another male, even though 96% of the copulations took place in front of another male. Only 6% were interrupted. Very fascinating. It means that they're very tolerant. Very tolerant. For a number of reasons. I will not get into that here. There are all reasons for this. There's all explanations for this. Evolutionary biological. And gorillas are different. Gorillas are different, very different than chimps and bonobos. Oh, it's also fascinating. But going back to what I was saying earlier, what was I saying earlier about the agency? Oh, that's right. That's right. About the egalitarianism and how hunter-gatherer societies, the most dominant males, they needed the low-ranking males to be cooperative because it's about strength in numbers. It's all about strength and cooperation. Intelligence, of course, is the most important characteristic for humans. The most important trait, intelligence. Intelligence breeds discipline. Intelligence breeds innovation. Intelligence breeds cooperation, self-control, all these things. All these things. Intelligence is what dominates. And that it's clear as day when you look at the world and when you look at history. Intelligence. And by the way, do females, especially teenage females, do they select for intelligence? Never. Ever. Ever. In fact, the bigger the retard, the better. The bigger the retard, the more aggressive and dominant they think that retard is. The louder the retard and the bigger the retard, the more attractive that retard is to a female. That retarded Pookie is to a female. Yeah. Or it could be a drooling sub 60 IQ pretty boy. As long as he's pretty, that's all that matters. They'd never select for intelligence. Ever. Ever. Not like it fucking matters because they're not supposed to select. We are an intrasexual selection species. The only age, and they do have, the evolutionary biological records show, the evidence shows that they should have just a little bit of agency. Because our testicles are just a little bit bigger than those of gorillas. Just a little bit. And they're almost identical in size to orangutans. I could go on and on and on and on for hours and hours about this. What I want to do is create a scripted video, and actually, I don't want to go on and on and on forever about this. Although it is very fascinating. And this DUC, it's not about DUC analysis. It's not about cattle analysis anymore. This is about evolutionary biology. I'm really fascinated by this. So it's not about how humans lived for the last 10,000 years after the invention of agriculture and pastoralism. That's only 10,000 years. Maybe it's a little longer than that. Maybe there are civilizations that we don't know about that existed. However, there is no geological record for that. There's no geological evidence for that. This Tartaria, all that nonsense. There would be, if any advanced civilizations existed that we don't know of, Atlantis, Tartaria, there would be massive, absolutely massive geological evidence for that in the form of abandoned mines. But there's none of that. There's none of it. it does look like the oldest civilizations were about 10,000, maximum 20,000 years old. Yeah. And then after that, it was all just, before that, it was all just hunter-gatherers, really. And humans lived as hunter-gatherers for hundreds of thousands of years. And that's when the majority, 99% of the evolution took place. I mean, it sure as hell didn't take place in the last 10,000 years. You know, especially when it comes to things like testicle size. So many things to take into consideration when analyzing hunter-gatherer societies, when thinking about testicle size and inbreeding, and just how much sexual agency females could potentially practice. Human females. The evidence demonstrates that they had very little agency. Very little agency. Well, I'm talking about natural agency. I'm not talking about agency granted to them by some soy-addled tribes, soy-addled gynocentric tribes, although there is no matriarchy on record, on the anthropological record. There are matrilineal societies, hunter-gatherer societies. There are matrifocal hunter-gatherer societies, but there are no matriarchal hunter-gatherer society. No matriarchy. There is no evidence of that existing, okay? And that's the general consensus among anthropologists. No matrifocal, yes. Matrilineal, yes. But in matrifocal societies and matrilineal societies, teenage females did not. In those hunter-gatherer societies, teenage females did not have any sexual agency. Also, inbreeding. That's another thing that is completely overlooked. Inbreeding is extremely important. Bonobos, chimps. Bonobos and chimps, the females, they transfer. It's called transferring. They transfer out of their troops. All the females transfer out of their troops. All the females that are born in the troop transfer out of the troop and join other troops. And that's in order to avoid inbreeding. Now, because that didn't happen among humans, like all the females born in the community transferring out of the community, no, never. There had to be mechanisms in place to avoid inbreeding. Teenage females, of course, would not take that into consideration. They would rather sleep with their own brother, if their brother is a pretty boy, than with an unrelated, quote-unquote, sub-5 male, okay? They'd rather sleep with their own father, or if their father is a quote-unquote Chad, they'd rather sleep with him than with an unrelated quote-unquote sub-5 male, okay? So teenage females don't give a fuck about parental investment. Clearly, they would all be single mothers without birth control today. If birth control didn't exist, they would all be single mothers by the age of 19. They do not take parental investment into consideration at all. They do not take the neurochemical well-being of their potential spawn into consideration at all when spreading their legs. And they certainly do not take inbreeding into consideration as well. But society, the community, does take these things into consideration. And in order to avoid inbreeding and in order to maintain social cohesion, they have to spread the vagina rather evenly. Okay? And that's what they did. That's what the ethnographic record shows. It doesn't show any massively skewed, massively disproportionate distribution of vagina. Anyway, that's enough of rambling for one session. I'm done.